Hi everybody, my name is Justin. I'm a fitness instructor at CFB Kingston with PSP. Today I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about overtraining. And so this is the case of when we get into very serious habits of training too much that it gets to the point that we actually cannot keep making improvements on our training. No matter how hard we work, we seem to either kind of plateau or we start to go backwards in kind of our progress. So there's going to be a couple of big things I'm going to be talking about. I'll throw a couple of personal anecdotes in there as we go. But as far as kind of our information, it's going to be fairly straightforward, nothing too complicated that we're going to be talking about. Some of it will actually be a lot of things people already know, but don't necessarily want to admit to themselves. I know it was something that a little bit of a process that I had to go through myself regarding certain things. So we're going to talk about today. Hopefully it's some good information that will help everybody out, and something that people can kind of take to heart and think to implement in their own lives. So, overtraining, kind of what is it? Basically, overtraining is training ourselves so much to the point that we're actually preventing gaining improvements with our fitness levels, and it can actually be to the point that it's a detriment that we start to fall backwards with our improvements. We either stop making progress or we actually start getting worse. So it's definitely something that we don't want to be doing, and it is a habit that a lot of people will actually fall into. So we actually see this a lot with high-level athletes, particularly people like varsity athletes in colleges and universities. At that age, kind of people will not have too much experience with their training. They may be very good in their sport, in their activity that they're doing, but what they need to learn a little bit is a little bit more balance, which we'll actually talk a little bit more about afterwards. But you will see it a lot in people like varsity athletes. I was reading through some studies, as much as within kind of runners across both male and female, you can have up to 66% of those athletes have actually suffered some form of overtraining syndrome. So overtraining syndrome is a little bit more specific than just overtraining alone. Overtraining syndrome is something that can last for like weeks to months. And that can be a real big setback for someone who's actually competing in a sport or some sort of fitness-related activity. Another place where we'll actually see a lot of kind of overtraining effects is going to be with people like your weekend warriors, people who push themselves real hard in their fitness or their sport. They don't necessarily train like a professional or a varsity athlete. It does tend to happen a lot in people as they start to kind of get older. There tends to be a lot of men trying to like relive the glory days as an athlete. This does end up happening to a lot of us. We try to maybe push ourselves a little bit too much like we used to, but we just can't handle it anymore at that level. It doesn't mean that we can't do things. It just means that we have to kind of change the way we think about it a little bit, just be a bit better to ourselves, to allow ourselves to progress and maintain, and actually allow ourselves to get better rather than getting down on ourselves for not already being better. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself here for a moment. I'm just going to kind of inject this into the story. I did used to be what I consider to be a runner. I'll put that in air quotes because I was not sure I did cross country in high school a little bit, but I was not a varsity athlete. I was not training up for the Olympics or anything, but I almost came to the point that I tried to push myself like I would be competing, even though it was kind of just for myself. I would get to the point where I would run every single day of the week. If I wasn't running every single day of the week, I felt like I failed myself in some way, or I just didn't feel good about myself. Came to the point that I would sometimes do it multiple times throughout the day. This also did happen when I was a little bit younger and quite a bit lighter, and even then it was still hard on my body. If I actually even went to try and run at that level today, I don't think I'd be able to walk, really. So what we want to kind of take away from that is you don't have to feel bad about yourself when you miss out on the gym or going for your run or going for your bike, anything like that. We want fitness to be something that helps promote our lives and make them better and make us feel good. I've heard stories about people talking about things like getting into running, helping quit smoking, where yes, that is technically a good thing, that's replacing a bad thing. Bringing it to the point of, like how I did running every day, is also a sort of addiction, and you don't want to kind of get into that habit. We want fitness to supplement our lives. We don't want it to become a detriment to our lives, to the point that we can't do other things. We're not happy about other things. So we've talked a little bit about kind of what overtraining is, kind of just with my story about getting into running a little bit too much. Gives you kind of an idea of, some of you may be in the same boat, some of you may be kind of pushing yourself that way and feeling bad about yourselves. What I want to talk next about is kind of what our goals should look like to be kind of have a healthy relationship with fitness and how we progress ourselves and how we maintain ourselves and how we keep fit without being too hard on ourselves, essentially. So what should our goals look like? So truth is, very few people are professional athletes. Yes, there are pro athletes that have trainers and coaches working with them and nutritionists that help them along as well. These are kind of people that stand out from the crowd. These are people who, some of it's genetics, some people just are better at certain things, and that's okay. Some of these people are actually able to handle kind of the loads that they throw at themselves in their training. They're also highly specialized. For the majority of people who are not professional athletes, we want to try to be a very good generalist. That's kind of what our goal is going to aim for. We want to be able to do things at a level that is good for kind of what we do. Pro athletes, they'll train at a level to be very specialized in their sport, to be very good at it. It takes quite a bit of work and commitment. Some people will have very specialized jobs where they need to be physically fit in a very specific way. Same kind of idea there. They're going to be very specialized towards that job, towards those tasks. For your average person though, so that's going to be kind of the majority of people watching these videos, as well as for myself, we want to be very good generalists. So this doesn't necessarily mean being good at everything, which I'll talk a little bit about later. I won't get into that just yet. We want to be very good generalists, and that means that there are things that we want to know that we're able to do and feel safe doing and feel comfortable doing without hurting ourselves. So when it comes to fitness, there's some very basic patterns that everybody wants to be able to do. So that's going to be very straightforward. That's going to be our squat movements, being able to get down to that parallel position, being able to keep the feet flat on the floor, being able to keep our chest up. Everybody should be able to get down into this position in one form or another. So some people may be able to load heavy loads onto their back or front rack in front of themselves. That's great. Not everybody has to be able to do it. You should be able to do it with some sort of load based on kind of who you are. So with some jobs, you may have to lift certain amounts of weight. You want to know that you can get down into this parallel position with the chest up without hurting your back and leaning forward too much, and know that you can pick something up comfortably without hurting yourselves. That's going to be one of kind of your main movement patterns that everybody should be able to do within their fitness routines. The other is going to be hinging. So when it comes to hinging, a lot of people will think of your deadlift, lifting big heavy weight, using the legs, spreading out if you like. Some people go into a sumo position, being able to hinge forward and pick up that real heavy weight. Not everybody necessarily has to do that. There are other options for that hinge pattern. So everybody should be able to hinge at your hips comfortably without straining your back. This can come in kind of different forms. Not everything has to be super heavy in a deadlift. For myself, I tend to do Romanian deadlifts, so that tends to be a little bit straighter legged, a little bit of a bend in the knees. I don't have one with me right now, but when I do training, I usually have a barbell with myself, and I get down into a comfortable hinge position, and I pull up off the floor. Also a hinge pattern, just a little bit closer in. I just don't go super heavy like I would with a heavy deadlift. Where for myself, for my body type, I tend to go a little bit wider when I get into that deadlift position, just to protect my back so I'm not rounded. I don't have the greatest mobility, and I'm guessing that a lot of people are kind of in the same boat. So in that, I open up my hips a little bit, bend the knees a little bit, let myself get down nice and low before I go with that heavy load. The idea here is to kind of pick things that work for you. Don't have to compare yourselves to other people. Yes, person next to you at the gym might be able to lift a much heavier load. They might be working on something different than you. Everybody should kind of know their capabilities and work within those capabilities. Another two big movements I would like to talk about is our pushing and pulling. So for a lot of people, that can mean doing the bench press and doing pull-ups. For some people, that's not what that's going to mean. So when we're kind of looking at pushing and pulling, in this case, we're referring to the upper body. So pushing, we have horizontal, we also have vertical. There's also incline pushing, which again, that kind of gets into a little bit more specialized movement. You want to have kind of good building blocks first before you get into that sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about bench press. Not everybody's going to load up a barbell with 200 pounds plus and be able to press that off their chest. That's okay, but everybody should be able to perform that pushing movement. Whether you do that in the form of a bench press with a barbell, whether you use dumbbells, whether you use a machine, that's okay. You just have to be careful to make sure that you pick something that kind of works for your level, that you're able to complete reps with nice full range of motion without hurting yourselves. The other big one is the pull-up. Not everybody can do a pull-up. That's okay. We'll see some people that are able to grab a set of rings, do a muscle up, lift themselves up over those rings. Not everybody has to be able to do that. What everybody should strive for is being able to pull up their own body weight. So, not saying everybody goes out and forces themselves to be able to do pull-ups. You might not be quite there yet. You might have to do an reverse row. So that's hanging yourself underneath the bar and bringing your chest up to that bar. Basically, you can kind of start on a bit of an incline, a little bit more upright. It's going to make it a bit easier, a little bit less strain of gravity to pull your chest towards that bar. As you get better, you can slowly progress yourself. And by slowly, I mean like this takes weeks and months to build up to actually having the strength to get into doing a pull-up. Don't rush yourself. Work yourself slowly down into a more horizontal position so that you can get into that inverted row. Then from there, you can kind of start working towards your pull-ups. Not everybody's going to be able to do ring muscle-ups, but everybody should strive towards being able to pull up their own body weight. So just to summarize kind of what our goals should be, is what I want everybody to try focusing on is learning kind of what their own capabilities are. Don't worry so much about what the person next to you is doing. Kind of take a little small assessment of yourself, kind of reflect a little bit and think, what am I able to do and what is it that I want to be able to do? And you should try to work on balancing your training program towards those goals. Not everybody's going to be a professional athlete, and that's okay. But everybody should have some kind of basic movements that they should be fairly competent at and just progress on working to get better at. And those tend to be our big primary movements, our squatting, our hinging, our pushing, and our pulling. So next up, building off of goal setting, I want to talk a little bit about balance. Balance in your training programs. Balance in kind of your fitness life and what you do for yourself. This doesn't mean that you have to try everything and have to be good at everything or have to do everything on a constant basis or cycle through. What this means is building off of those goal setting. That goal setting is you want to have balance in the things that you do that help make you better. So not everybody likes running, and that's absolutely okay. It is important that everybody, so I've worked a lot with very young people and very old people and everybody in between. Everybody needs a little bit of resistance training. For some people, that's going to be with barbells, putting heavy weights over their head. For some people, that's going to be using machines. For some people, that's going to be using bands. That's perfectly fine, and that's okay. Everybody does need a little bit of resistance training where their muscles are working against some external load that they can resist against and move their joints through their full range of motion to help build that strength in there. On top of that, everybody does need some form of cardio. I know a lot of people hate cardio. Perfectly fine. Where we want to go kind of with a cardio is have something, doesn't have to be running, doesn't necessarily have to be rowing or swimming or biking. You gotta pick something that kind of works for you, something that you don't necessarily have to enjoy it, but something that you feel you're able to do without being a detriment to other things that you want to do. So you don't want to just suddenly force yourself into running because you think that running is good, if that's going to be a detriment to your strength program. You want to pick something that kind of complements and allows you to progress in kind of both fields. So when picking cardio that's right for you, you want something that allows you to strengthen your lungs and your heart, allows you to perform things that you want to in your life. Particularly if you're someone who's big into strength training, you want to be able to do those things, you want to be able to do those big main movement patterns that we talked about, you want to be able to do your squats and your benching without running out of breath. You don't want to be gasping for air or feeling dizzy, lightheaded, anything like that. Basically, kind of our cardio can complement other things that we do in our life. If, say, you're working a job where you have to be walking a lot, you want to make sure that your heart and lungs are strong enough that you're not going to be out of breath while you're walking. This is kind of what I mean by balance, is making sure that we have decent strength and we have decent cardiovascular strength. So when I talk about balance, it doesn't mean that you have to try everything. You have to pick the things that are right for you, that help complement your lifestyle and what you want out of kind of your fitness routine. Everybody needs some form of resistance training and some form of cardiovascular training to reach them towards their fitness goals. It just happens that it's going to look a little bit different for everybody, and that's okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the responsibility of trainers and coaches. So a trainer, someone like myself, someone who is there to help athletes reach their goals. So big thing that we do want to focus on with us is that we're not spreading the athlete's efforts too thin. So going back to kind of what I was just talking about with balance, we don't want to push our athletes to try to be good at everything. We should really listen to them and really focus on what it is they want to be good at, what it is they want to improve upon, and that's kind of where we're going to focus our efforts and helping them get better. The other big thing too is we have to have reasonable expectations. So we may have a plan, an idea in our head, and the perfect program to get somebody super strong, but we've really got to be aware of kind of where somebody is starting at, kind of where they're coming from and joining into our training program. So as a trainer, it's also partially our job to be there when our athlete says, yeah, I want to go for that big heavy squat. If we're kind of seeing how they're moving and maybe their form's kind of been falling apart on the build-up sets, we don't necessarily want to discourage them from trying, but what we want to be is kind of be there to be that little outside voice that's going to say, hey, maybe we leave for today, you did real good with everything else, let's wait on that. It's going to be better in the long run. We have to take a little bit of responsibility in ensuring that our athletes don't feel like they need to push themselves. We need to be kind of a good force behind them, someone that's going to help them realize that it's not just necessarily about that single day's workout, but we have kind of a long-term plan for them. We have to kind of keep them on that good path to have kind of good results in the long run. So, big main point that I've kind of been building up to is fitness in our lives should be something that we're constantly working on improving, that we always have kind of at the back of our mind, something that helps make us better. So, nice little part at the bottom here. Fitness should enhance and support our lives, not be a detriment to it. So, that's not a quote from a textbook or anything. That's actually, when I was reading through kind of this presentation with my wife yesterday, she pointed it out. And then she said that she could do my job. So kind of the big point that we've been building to here is that fitness should be something that we incorporate into our lives, into our regular routine. It should be something that we stress ourselves about, that we're worried about missing. It should be something that is an active enough part of our lifestyle that it's okay to miss days at the gym. So particularly kind of in today's climate with COVID and not having as much access to facilities and equipment as we would like, we have to be a little bit easier on ourselves. So the idea of missing days should not be a big stressor in your fitness routine. Basically, kind of how I talked about before, we shouldn't be so worried about that workout that day. Where we have to kind of put our concern is our progress on like a much larger scale. So kind of from month to month, from year to year, kind of as we get older, are we kind of adjusting how we work out, how we train ourselves, that better benefits kind of what our bodies are like at that time. We want fitness to kind of be an overarching goals that are within our lives. We don't want to be so concerned about kind of the small amounts that we do like in one day. We want to be kind of have a general progression throughout the course of our lives. So this means kind of having a healthy relationship with it. It shouldn't be something that we get too obsessed with. Some people might hate exercise, and that's perfectly fine, but you should also kind of understand how much it can benefit you as well. Some people really love exercise. Some people love running every day, kind of like how I used to. That's kind of on the other end of that spectrum. You get people who absolutely hate it, and you get people who kind of almost love it a little bit too much, that they push themselves to a point where they kind of forget about other things, and they don't necessarily focus on the goal of that, just like doing that all the time because that makes them feel good. We kind of want to bring those two sets of people into the center. Fitness should support and enhance our lives. It shouldn't actually be a detriment to it. If it is, maybe we've got to take a little bit of a step back and kind of think like, hey, like what actually are my goals for why I'm going to the gym, why I'm working on my cardio, why I'm working on improving my strength. You kind of want to ask less the question of what should I be doing and more why should I be doing it. So I know there's a lot of information that we kind of went through and stuff that overlapped quite a bit within itself, within kind of what I was talking about, but just to kind of summarize, I just kind of want to go through these 5 points one more time, just very quickly here, just to finish off. So overtraining, what is it? It's when we push ourselves too far outside of our capabilities that it actually has a detriment to our fitness progress, to our goals. What should our goals look like? So our goals should be reasonable for ourselves. We don't have to worry about what other people are doing or what we kind of think we should be doing. We have to worry about kind of what's going to be best for us. So balance. So again, means don't worry, we don't have to be good at everything. We don't have to be working on everything all the time. You're going to spread yourselves out so thin that you don't actually start to make any progress on anything just because there's such an infrequency of the components of your fitness that you're working on that you don't actually have a chance to get better. So balance is picking the things that are right for you and kind of spreading it out through your training program. So that's throughout the weeks and months and years that you're training, making sure you have a good balance within that to reach those goals. Responsibility of coaches and trainers. So for somebody like myself, I have to be there to be kind of that good voice in somebody's head that says, hey, don't worry about pushing yourself today. Let's come back to it either later in the week, maybe next week. We're looking at kind of the long-term goals and how we can use fitness, use our training to help support our lives and make ourselves better in kind of a bigger way rather than just worrying about at that moment. We just want to try to keep our athletes nice and level-headed and working on getting themselves better without having them drop back and it's okay to have failures once in a while on something, but if we really focus on a steady progression rather than forcing ourselves just to be better in that one session, that's when we're going to start making those gains and being able to maintain our strength, maintain our cardiovascular capabilities. So that's kind of the responsibility of coaches and trainers to help keep their athletes on course. Responsibility to yourself. So fitness is supposed to be there to help make us better, both at our fitness, both at our lives. It should enhance things that we do. It shouldn't make us feel bad about ourselves. It should make us feel good. And it shouldn't be something that stresses us out, like, oh, I'm gonna miss the day at the gym, or like, especially us here in Canada, like if it's real bad weather out or something, we don't make it out that day, that's okay. Our overarching goals of where we kind of want our life going, which direction our fitness is taking, should be more of a priority rather than that one session that day. We should have kind of enough like backlog of how much work and progress we've put in that it's okay to miss a day once in a while. We're coming up to Christmas time here. A lot of people are kind of always thinking it's like, oh, well, for Christmas, like I'm going to eat too much, I'm going to have a lot of chocolate, I'm not going to work out as much. That's okay, because the idea is that we have kind of enough work behind us that it's okay if we kind of go a little bit easier on ourselves sometimes, that we take a few breaks. Big thing that I want everybody to kind of take away from this is not necessarily what we're doing for training, but why we're doing that training. The what is important, of course, but everybody wants to first and foremost think about why are we training, what are we trying to be better at. Fitness should be something that helps make our lives better. It shouldn't be something that we stress about, and it should be something that enhances. So what I want everybody to take away from this, from my little talk here today, is I want people to, as much as you focus on the what of what you're doing for your training, what you're doing for your exercise that day, I want you to really think about the why are you doing it? What is kind of the purpose behind your training? And the answer to that should be that you're trying to improve your life, you're trying to get stronger, you're trying to build your cardiovascular capacity. We want to kind of understand why we're doing something before we start thinking about the what. It's still important to think about the what, but get that why behind you first. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hope everybody has a great day.
PSP Kingston, the health and wellness provider for the military community.